All right, guys, we are back at it again, bringing you another episode of Liberty Sports Podcast. Um, so, Dad, to start things off, I got a question for you because we've had a few conversations here recently, about the horse riding, and then you had the stuffed sloth the other day, um, on your
Not a sloth.
your
Not
show.
even close.
We ended up doing some research, and we can conclude that it is an ii.
It is.
Why Lydia picked that out, not quite sure. Once
If
again, we
what
talked
comes
about it
in, we'll
last
see
time.
about it. But yeah,
We talked about it last time. She knows everything, and if you even try
but
to prove her wrong on anything,
hold on though. Before you go any further, I have a story.
let's hear it.
So Lydia got Lydia's birthday, and she got two guinea pigs for her birthday. Um,
You can't, not in that house.
so the thing is, like, we're like, we need two females, right? So we go to the Petco's, and are these two females? Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Lydia's up there changing the cage and everything else and comes down and she's like, yeah, one of them's a dude. So we're like, okay, well, looking at like, I mean, I'm not a zoologist, but one of them's a dude. And so we start calling around, like figuring out like what's going on here, right? Like, and they're like, well, chances are he's already done his stuff. And so okay, so fast forward, take him to the vet, and you just can't take it to the vet down the road, right? Like there's a specialty vet that you
Yeah.
gotta go to that costs an arm and a leg for you to even like show up with an exotic pet, which whatever. The female's already pregnant, got two babies in her, but here's the kicker to it: she's probably going to have the babies here in the next week,
Oh,
which means that she's was pregnant when we got her.
oh,
So at the store, they're like, just you know what, you do you, girl, you boo, go get yours. You know what I mean. So now it's like, what do we? And this is what it says too about it. I'm like, can we go to like a guinea pig breeder so that we know
dude,
what's
where
happening?
are
Because
you
you
gonna
go to
find one?
Petco, huh?
Where are you gonna find a
You
guinea
can't.
pig?
They don't
Is
exist.
that even a thing?
Although we may be the first Northwestern Ohio guinea pig breeders because we're apparently we're having it's unbelievable what goes on around here.
I'm gonna tell you something. What goes? You guys have brought Perrysburg back to life.
It's
I'm
it's
gonna tell you something. Perrysburg is like the place to be now. That's
pregnant guinea
unbelievable.
pigs.
So what are you gonna do now? What happens when you got baby guinea pigs running around? What happens with Bella
Well,
and Toby? They're not gonna
first
live
of
very
all,
long.
like I'm gonna like to be a guinea pig midwife and birth these things. So this, I mean, if I could ride a horse, I could birth a guinea pig,
But
right?
here, all right,
Like, I mean,
and
come on,
see, and you know what? You're not.
how hard can it be? Like
I'm
I played first base.
I'm more concerned about Bella and Toby
Oh,
because
they can't get in the room.
I
Well,
understand
I
that,
don't
but
know.
wow, man.
Bella has
Bella,
learned how to open doors, so that's
yeah,
too. That's she
yeah,
does that now.
yeah. So you got a lot that you got to figure out here, but
Anyway, okay, so
so well that
that's kind of where we're at right now with everything. So
well
we'll keep
that's
you updated on the guinea pig situation as it unfolds.
yeah. And make sure,
You
hey,
know,
start taking some videos and pictures so we can post them to TikTok and Instagram so you guys can be in the loop there. But that's a decent segue because you talk about if I could ride a horse, I can, father some guinea pigs. Well, here's another question I have for you. So I think you had mentioned this to me throughout the week. Um, I thought we had brought it up on the last episode, but when I was editing it and going through the raw footage, you must have set it off camera because I didn't have anything recorded. But ice skating. Now,
yeah,
you say you got ice skating now, but here's the kicker, right? So when you're ice skating and you get there and you get your skates and you lace them up and you get ready to get on the ice, what is the first thing you are going to do?
Well, I'm gonna have a beer. You know, for one. Number two, like, well, you got to. I can walk to the rink. Once I get on, then the little guy's got to bring the plastic thing for me.
See, and there, thank you. That's what I'm trying to get to. You can't,
Otherwise, I'm like
but see,
Bambi.
okay, so then you can't ice skate then.
Why can I skate?
No, because if you have to use the little plastic push cart, then that doesn't count.
Again,
It's the same thing
if
as needing a stool to get on a horse. It does not count.
but if it's there for you to use,
It's not there for
why can't
you.
you use it?
You know what it's there for? It's there for Anna and Lydia. It's there for
No,
children.
no,
It's not there for you.
they'll skate circles around me.
But point is, it's there for kids. It's not there for a
No,
50-year-old
it's there
man.
for people to
That-
utilize for assistance as needed.
It's not. So you're
Last
telling
time you and I went ice skating, what did I do? I spent the entire time holding on to
you
the
did,
boards going
and you
around.
still almost fell six
Oh, yeah,
times.
yeah, absolutely. Well, it's ice for one, like it's slippery.
Well, I'm watching the Red Wings game right now. How come these dudes are just running all over the place?
Well,
They're
for
not
one,
falling
they're not
down.
running; they're on skates,
Well,
so
they're not.
they're skating.
They're not falling down.
Well, that's because they're hockey professionals. You give me a season to train to be, I'll be skating.
I can skate.
Eh,
I'm good. I can
no,
skate fast.
no, you can't.
Yeah, I can.
You can't
Give,
stop.
oh, I can stop. I know how
No,
to stop.
no.
Downtown Detroit, Campus Martius. I skate
Yeah.
circles around those people during Christmas time. They got the big Christmas tree and all the cute couples. Oh, let's go ice skating. And I'm bobbing and weaving in and out of
They're
there.
the one peoples that were like, they're like to clear it to put the Zamboni on. And then the people were like, we're holding back to get engaged. And I'm trying to get across and slide like to through them as they're because I'm falling and slipping and
And you're
everything. And
just
they're like, oh, this is a
begging.
great moment. And I'm
You're
like, don't mind me.
begging to get off the ice because you're like
Slide
fighting
on
for
my
your life.
stomach like Pete Rose.
And meanwhile, they're trying to do their engagement.
Yeah.
Got,
Drops the ring. You can't see it on the ice. The Zamboni comes by, scoops it up.
it's real good.
This is a bad choice for them.
So basically what we got going on, guys, is we've got in a couple months here when I get back in Ohio, we get on site. We got a horse riding challenge that we got to do. That'll be up on the YouTubes, and then we've got an ice skating challenge that we got to do. So
I've been practicing the horse riding.
okay. We'll get into that too at some point, but he has been practicing the
The
horse
girls have been
riding.
teaching me all the
So
moves.
we'll get a reaction video to that going, and that'll be up
Yeah.
on YouTube also, TikTok, whatever. Make sure you guys follow us on all of our socials. Links are in the bio to every podcast. We're going to be posting more than just podcast episodes on YouTube going forward. Like I said, once we get on site, we'll be posting videos of the horse riding, the ice skating, and other sports challenges too. That's another thing. Give us some ideas what you want to see us do. You want to see us go curling, tennis,
The pickleballs.
pickleball. Yeah, so we'll make a series out of that. But speaking of sports, let's jump into here to football here. The NFL offseason has kind of been wild already as we're approaching the NFL draft coming up here in a couple weeks. But let's start with the offseason because there's been a lot of moves going on, and we can go ahead and start with some guys that have been requesting trades. DK Metcalf is one of those guys who just requested a trade from Seattle. Dad, what do you think? And what do you think are some possible landing spots?
Yeah, so I mean, it's the guy's just not happy, right? Like
Yeah.
he wants out. And so initially you what you do is you got to look at it and you say, okay, well, what are the realistic possibilities as far as, because number one, when you're talking about trade, you're dealing with existing contracts. You're dealing
Yeah.
with people that have cap space, because most of the time in the NFL, you're not trading player for player. I mean, sometimes players can be involved in those kinds of things, but most of the time you're trading draft picks for players.
Right.
And the Seahawks are asking for a first round and a third round pick for DK Metcalf. Now he's on the last year of his deal coming up. So he signed it. He signed a 3-year, $72 million deal. He's on the last year of it in 2025. That's a cap hit. That's a cap hit of nearly $30 million.
I mean, it's insane.
So for a guy who then is going to be a free agent.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're giving up a first and a third for a big cap hit for a guy who are you going to try to re-sign? And if you're going to try to re-sign, what does that deal look like?
Right.
Move forward. So you're talking about teams that are going to have to, one, have the space, or they're going to have to be teams that are like, you know what, this is win now mode, and we're willing to give up a little bit of the future because we have a window that
right.
we need to win. Some of the teams that have already talk out of Seattle is like, okay, we're not gonna shoot ourselves in the foot, and you're definitely not going to NFC West teams.
Right.
We don't even want you to go to any NFC teams. So they're kind of looking like we're really going to just entertain trade conversations with teams out of the AFC. The ones, Chargers make sense. They want somebody. They had that good year last year. Harbaugh, the offensive genius, and with Herbert, and give him a number one receiver to go along with Lad McConkey, and that makes sense. Now, do the numbers work and all that kind of stuff? Are the Chargers, who are on the rise, willing to give up a first round and a third round pick as they're just now getting into the conversation? So that's kind of interesting. The Bills make sense, right?
Yeah,
The
I was
Bills
going to
need
say
get over the
Buffalo.
hump. This is it, right? Like, so the Bills and even the Ravens.
Yeah.
So you got two quarterbacks who just haven't been able to get to that over that hump, the AFC Championship hump, and get to the Super Bowl and everything else. The interesting thing about it is, Josh Allen has had receivers.
Right.
But you talk about adding Metcalf and all that. I mean, let's see what happens when you get Lamar Jackson some help.
Right.
I mean, he hasn't had a number one receiver to throw to.
I mean, I guess Hollywood Brown. And then you lost him to Kansas City, and then Zay Flowers.
Yeah,
but these aren't guys that are putting up numbers like DK. And keep in mind, DK's putting up numbers with Geno Smith at quarterback. It's not like he's putting up numbers with MVP quarter. And this is no knock on Geno. I'm just saying Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have won MVPs, right? So imagine what DK can do with an actual. If he's doing that with Geno, the addition he could make to a team like Baltimore or Buffalo would be pretty drastic.
Yeah, and so so you're looking at that. The other names that have been thrown around too. You talk about, I mean, the Chiefs.
Of course, they're always
the Chiefs. The Chiefs are in a situation because what happened to them in the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
If they don't do something to stay relevant, they could slide. You got a situation where you're losing your receiving core pretty much. I mean, you're ending up with because you're losing Hopkins, you're losing Juju. Travis Kelce, he's going to come back for one more year or whatever, and he was a shell of himself. I mean, didn't even put forth an effort in the Super Bowl, right? So, so that's something to where they're like, we don't care. We cap space be damned, and future picks, whatever. We want to stay relevant. The only NFC team that's even being talked about as a possibility is the Packers, because the Packers are in that situation right now to where it's like, hey, we've got Jordan Love. We think Jordan Love is the guy, but in order for him to be the guy, he's got to have some help. So, can we go ahead and do that with them? So it's a short list. The contract, for one, the fact that he's going to be a free agent after the year, and what Seattle is asking for, is a lot. So it'll be interesting to see how all of that changes, because I think number one, I think the asking price is going to have to come down.
Yeah.
For a guy with that much money, and then and the fact that you only get him for 1 year.
Right.
I'm not going to give up two potential future stars in a first and a third rounder for a 1 year rental, unless I'm the Chiefs or I'm the Bills or the Ravens in those types of situations. So I think that's kind of it's a short list, but I think
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're at with it right now. It'll be interesting to see how the numbers on that change.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, like you mentioned, there's a lot of teams here that are thinking about windows, right? And like you mentioned, the situation where what you'd have to give up. It's going to be interesting to see where he goes, because I feel like he's going to end up going to a place that's going to make a push for the Super Bowl. And I think he knows that too, which is why he
Yeah.
requested this trade,
Oh yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, in other words, though, we've got another one requesting a trade here from Cleveland. Miles Garrett, extremely unhappy in Cleveland,
I mean, that's
and
the big one, right?
it really is. And the Browns have been extremely stubborn with this process. From what we've heard from multiple
Yeah.
news outlets and multiple reporters, the Browns have not made this easy on other teams in the league, and have definitely not made it easy on Miles Garrett. But he wants out.
Yeah, and I mean the Browns. So they sit there and said, no, we're not trading you. Like yeah, you requested a trade or whatever, but we're not doing it. We're confident that we can work something out, whatever. Well, his agent comes out and says, do not contact me anymore. We're not talking to you
Yeah,
anymore. We're not working out a deal with you. The only thing we're doing is getting traded. So that's where that's ended up. So then the Browns are like, okay, well, fine, you got to give us two first rounders. That's kind of where they're at with wanting that trade. Now, again, you talk about, well, number one, okay, well, let's look at some of the financials here. Okay, so he's in the middle of a 5 year deal through 2026. So you got 2 more years left on the deal. It was a $125 million deal. I was looking at it in 2025. The cap hit is going to be like 19.7 million. And in 2026, the cap hit's going to be 20.3 million. So you're talking essentially around $20 million a year for 2 years for the guy.
yeah,
Okay. Now, that's a lot of money for a defensive player. I mean, that's just it is, but
hmm
it's well worth it. Now, the lucky thing about it is that he's in this contract, so when you're trading, so you at least have those 2 years before you start having to deal with negotiations and stuff. You wonder though, whoever trades for him, is he going to play 1 year and then in that last year going to be kind of half playing and half negotiating and all that kind of stuff? So that'll be interesting to see. But the teams that have come up, obviously, we have all the usual suspects that are looking for edge rushers in the league. And the Eagles, they just,
yep,
the rich get richer, right? They're
hmm
they're they're wanting to make a deal to solidify them. The Commanders now are they're the ones that are very interesting, because I was looking at it. They have $78 million worth of cap space. So his $20 million hits are still going to allow them to do
right,
a lot, either on the offensive side of the ball or more on the defensive side of the ball, or whatever. But as they're, like we talked about with the Chargers, they're on the rise, and you got this stud of a quarterback,
yeah,
Jaden Daniels. Do you want to mortgage your future with two first round picks?
right.
But then do you have enough confidence to sit there and say, well, my first round picks are going to be in the 30s anyway?
Yes, I mean, you got that too, but you got to remember, you're talking about a young guy in Jaden Daniels, and the potential of this team. This is a team that went to the NFC Championship last year. Let's not forget.
Yeah.
You could call it a fluke, you can call it whatever. I think, I mean, they've clearly shown that they can hang, right? I mean, they got blown
Yeah.
out to Philly, but Philly won a Super Bowl and they blew out Kansas City. So that doesn't look like a bad loss to me. So going forward,
No.
I don't really think you have to be as cautious. I think you have the potential to be able to take a gamble and give up some picks on a guy like this, because I think you're already kind of heading in the right direction without future picks, if that makes sense.
And you're right. I mean, we talked about it before the playoffs started. I mean, you thought that the Lions were going to boat race them. There might have been a little bit of a homer in you
Yeah.
and all that stuff. But I mean, we talked about, and we said they were a 12-win team
Yeah.
in the regular season. I mean, it wasn't like they were some fluke, and losing to the Eagles the way that they did. That was the third time they played them.
Mm-hmm. And they
It
split
yeah,
regular season.
and you've got this young team and everything else going against the Eagles, who were primed and at
Mm-hmm.
home in the playoffs and all this other kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that's, now, to me, the numbers make sense, the situation makes sense, taking that leap and everything else, that makes sense. But we're also having a conversation because, again, anytime anybody talks defense, edge rushers and all this other stuff, the Lions name
Yep.
always gets brought up, right? And the problem is we're in the middle right now of trying to get ahead of the game and extend Hutch,
Yes.
because he's he's worth extending, right?
Yes.
Then the Lions have $46 million in cap space. So, having that $20 million hit with the trade. Also, this is kind of the thing about the Lions, right? Like, we felt like they should have been in the Super Bowl. Now, obviously, we're Detroiters, we're homers. But I mean, we're not the only ones. Like, everybody was
Yeah.
kind of like, okay, they should have hung on to that lead and beat Frisco and been in the Super Bowl. Last year, they were the odds-on favorite to be in the Super Bowl. This is kind of reminding me of that 2006 to 2014 period with the Detroit Tigers, when they had the roster of all rosters and got to the World Series twice, but couldn't do anything about it. I'm wondering, are we there with the Lions? You've got Brad Holmes has struck magic every single time he makes a draft pick, right? Every
Yes.
single time he does a deal and all this stuff, everything other than people getting hurt. But I mean, but as far as that goes, the thing is, you wonder, because of the fact that all of these picks have panned out, they're all going to be coming off of their rookie deals. And so that's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult to keep the team together for, an extended period of time. Are the Lions in a window?
Right.
We already lost pretty much the whole coaching staff,
Yeah.
after 2 years of this. We'll to see. So is that worth giving up 2 first-round picks? Again, you're thinking we're going to be picking late first round. Maybe do something later on to move up in the second round, whatever. So you're not really missing too much. But so that's a possibility. And then then there's the Bills again. They're
Yeah, of course.
they're talking about everybody. They're in the mix for, we want everybody. We're gonna
Yeah.
be involved. And then the Bears and the Packers. Now, the Bears the Bears want everybody. The Bears need help. They need, and all that stuff. If Myles Garrett is saying that I want to get a trade because I want to win now, are the Bears a team
No.
that he's going to really want to go to?
No.
Um, how
Because
much
everybody's
how much say does he have
and
if it's
that's
a
another thing
trade?
too, right? I mean, he requests a trade. That's about as much say as he can get. He was out there. He was able to be like, "I want to be traded." Now, it's in all reality, it's up to his agent and it's up to these teams to negotiate something. And his agent's going to lay them out on the table, and they're going to say, "Look, this is what you got." Right. And but if you're talking about if Garrett is trying to get out of Cleveland because he wants to win, it would be so pointless to go to Chicago. And
Right.
again, I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, Ben Johnson and Caleb," and they're starting to look scary.
Yeah. But
I don't
of
need to
all
get into
those
it, but
teams, though, of all those teams, if so, okay, so you're the Browns GM. You're Kevin Costner in draft day.
yeah,
And you're fielding this, and you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, I'm getting a 2 first-round picks for the next 2 years. Okay. I'm getting my 2025 draft pick, and I'm getting a 2026 draft pick, first round. Of all the teams that are presenting saying, yes, we'll give you 2 first-rounders, which team do you think we're going to talk to the most? I mean, a
yeah,
team, the Bears are going to be drafted
yep,
high. whereas these other teams are going to be drafted in the upper 20s and 30, So how, and then how much does Garrett have, a say in
Yeah.
where he's going to go in that kind of stuff. So
Well, also, how much does Garrett have left in him?
that's the other part too, because you know yes, he's been unbelievable. He doesn't show any time. I mean, the next 2 years you're pretty safe. I think, barring
Yeah.
injuries, of course, but I think that you're pretty safe with that. Now the next person that's a legit conversation to be had with the next person that kind of a little bit shocking that happened, but I don't know. Any more thoughts on Garrett?
No, I mean, honestly, as a Lions fan, obviously we love Hutch and we had Zadarius Smith last year. We didn't get to see them play side by side. The thought of that would be cool if we can't land somebody else. And this isn't taking anything away from Zadarius Smith. He brought a great attitude to the team. He played well. He stepped up when we needed him to. But when you've got these other names on the table and then you're talking about contracts and you're looking to pay somebody, Za might be asking for a little too much when you have the possibility of going after Miles Garrett, or we're going to mention two other ones on this list here.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's really all I got for Garrett. We'll see how this pans out. But moving on here, Dad, the next one, Max Crosby. He got extended in Vegas for another 3 years after all that talk of wanting out and this and that. And he's from Michigan, went to Eastern, coming home to Detroit, all this. I mean, what happens now?
Well, first of all, good for Max. I mean, highest paid non quarterback. It's 3 years, 106. I mean, you're talking
Yeah,
$35 million a year for a defensive player. Now he is a game changer, and I
absolutely.
mean, he's a handful of defensive guys that literally changed the game plan completely,
Mhm.
and so good for him. I'm happy for him. I mean, why would you not sign that if somebody's the only thing for me is I'm curious as to why the Raiders would be willing to pay that kind of money when they need so much help on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, like you released, your quarterback. I mean, who's going to play? You got to go out and get a quarterback now. Are you
Yeah,
going to draft a quarterback? Are you going to draft Shadur Sanders? Are you going to, because Cam Ward might not be there? Are you going to go Jackson Dart? What are you going to you going in the draft? Are you figuring that that's going to be the play? But then if that is the play, really, what are your chances of really being able to elevate yourself to a playoff team right away?
right.
Or if you're going to go into free agency, and we'll talk about the free agent
Yeah,
quarterbacks that are going to be out there. I just it's curious to me why you would give that kind of money to a now listen, I'm not saying, look, I will always say, God, if someone's willing to pay it, then you're worth it,
right.
right? Like, I mean,
Of
that's
course.
that's just the way that it is. If somebody's going to offer you that money, you're going to take it. I just don't understand what the Raiders are doing, because I think he's top five defensive player
Of
in the
course.
league,
Easily.
and young still,
Yeah.
and coming off that injury, but it should be fine. Um, it's curious to me, but I do think that signing has an impact on what's going to happen. What is Joey Bosa signed for?
Right. Because
What
as we
is
now have gone through this list here of guys that have requested trades and some moves that have happened, came out at the time of this recording yesterday that Joey Bosa has been released from the Los Angeles Chargers. And we just mentioned, with DK Metcalf earlier, Chargers building up this offense, Harbaugh, this big offensive guru. Well, you just let go of a 5-time Pro Bowler on defense. So where do you go from now as you're the Chargers? You had a great year, you got embarrassed in Houston. You're focusing so much on defense or on offense. You're kind of, to me, it looks like you're just kind of leaving your defense in the dust, and then you let go of Bosa. It's a real head scratcher to me. I'm trying to figure it out, Dad. What do you got?
well, there's always a reason behind it, right? And
Mhm.
so you got to look and you got to try to find out what's going on. Number one, okay, so what do we know about Joey Bosa? 9 years in the league. Edge rushers, how many more years do you have if you've been in the league for 9 years? Number two, he's had some nagging injuries.
Yeah.
So they're looking at it saying, okay, Max Crosby just signed this deal. We don't want to have to get into a situation to where, like we're not going to re-sign him anyway. Let's do what we can to I think by releasing him, they freed up $11 million in cap space. Now we can go ahead and we can use that to maybe get in the mix for some of these other defensive players or whatever. I mean, so it's interesting to me that they did that. I can see the math behind it. But it'll be interesting to see where does he go now, and what is the market for a guy like him who's 9 years in the league, coming off of some nagging injuries for the past few years, and what now is the market for edge rushers
Hmm.
in the league. So it'd be interesting to see where he goes, what he signs for. There's a bunch of teams that
Of course.
get into the mix. I mean, obviously we the first one that comes to mind that everybody's talking about, that like, and I don't know how much of it is just the Bosa family wishful thinking about him going to the 49ers.
Yeah,
But now there's the Lions. Do
of
the
course.
Lions play? The Bears again have been
Yep.
talked about because the Bears are, trying to make a play for everybody. And the one that's interesting to me that has been in the mix is the Bengals. And this, kind of almost segues into
Yep.
the next one. But so Sam Hubbard retires.
Correct.
Okay, so he retires, so he's defensive line. Uh, and then Hendrickson requests a trade.
Yep.
So now they don't have any edge rushers. Who's so now it's like, okay, well, Joey Bosa's out there.
Hmm. Yeah.
So now they're in the mix, and then I saw some things saying to where it's like, the NFC South, the whole NFC South is in the mix for everybody, but nobody wants to go to any of those teams.
Well,
So
right.
we'll see what
We'll see what
happens.
happens there. But yeah, so you mentioned, the Joe Bosa thing, and then you mentioned Trey Hendrickson requested a trade, and Cincinnati granted him permission to go out and request that trade. So now we're looking at, and keep in mind when Hutch went down last season in Detroit, Hendrickson was talked about a lot as a possible guy that Brad Holmes might go after. Ultimately, the way things panned out, we ended up with Zadarius Smith. And again, I keep going back to Zadarius Smith because we're talking about all these defensive ends and these edge rushers here that are now requesting trades and getting released and all this stuff going on. And then, of course, Detroit is the first team in the mix when you talk about all these guys. And nobody is even, really contemplating the fact that, well, we got Zadarius Smith that we never got to see play side by side with Hutch. This is a guy, Brad Holmes, who we know can draft. Like, what are we willing to give up for a guy like Garrett, Bosa, Hendrickson when we've already got Zadarius Smith, who we could re-sign for way cheaper, who could make just as much of an impact alongside Hutch? It's a topic, and to me, it's you could juxtapose it because it's a tricky situation to me to think about.
And Brad Holmes did come out and said, even though the Lions are in the mix for all these guys, right? And people have the Lions as the favorite to get Myles Garrett, and Brad Holmes came out and said, look, we're trying to extend Hutch.
Right.
We've got, Aleem McNeil, we got all these other guys, we got players that we have to sign. And we also have this young group that is
Right.
going to be, coming off of rookie contracts, and we're going to have to sign these guys as well. So he said it's going to be very tough to add a piece like Garrett with the money that's involved, and now with the Crosby signing, it kind of raises it because you're not just taking on the current contract. When you're talking about these guys, like Henriksen is in the same type of a situation. So he's nearly a $16 million cap hit, and then a free agent. So again, and it's a trade, so now you're looking at, again, another 1 year rental for, and if you're talking about a $46 million cap space, and you eat up 16 of it with a guy for 1 year, and you're having to give up picks for him, is that worth it? Garrett, are you willing to give up 2 first round picks for a guy who, now he's at least 2 years, but that's $20 million on your cap.
Yeah.
And then what do you do? You're not going to be able to re-sign him, because in 2 years you're going to have to sign, whatever you're doing with Hutch to extend him, but you're going to have Branch, you're going to have, you know,
Terry and
Gibbs,
Arnold's.
you're going to have, you got to figure out what you're going to do. Is Jamison Williams the odd man out because
Yeah.
you just can't afford? So I don't know.
And then you got Kirby Joseph still on the defensive side of the ball, as well as Terry and Arnold. It's going to
Carlton
be a tough
Davis,
break.
you figure
Yeah.
out what you can do. You're going to try to sign him again. It's
Jack Campbell. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, it's so much. And
because you
and
were so good in the draft for so many years in a row at all the first 3 rounds. That's kind of like the good and the bad. That's why I talk about,
Windows.
the window, because what do you do when everybody has to, everybody wants a new contract? And how do you handle it? But again, it's everybody. I think essentially what it comes down to, the Packers, the Bears, Commanders, they're in the mix for everybody. The Bills are mostly in the mix for everybody. The Hendrickson stuff is pretty fresh, so we don't know, who else is having conversations. But I think that yeah, you look at those teams, and they're pretty much in the mix for everybody. I think the Commanders are in the best situation, and then they just have to make a decision, like,
Yeah.
where do we want to go? Do we want, because draft picks aren't guaranteed. You
No.
you go with a known commodity, right? Like, as you're getting there,
Yeah.
and as we see with the Lions, you can't say, oh, there's always next year,
Yeah.
because then the injuries happen, and then
Yep.
everything else, and then what? Your window's gone. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. And then to continue here with the offseason moves, Christian Kirk was traded to Houston. Jacksonville gave him away for what seemed like a bag of chips, just a 2026 7th round pick. Now, how does that help Houston? Because there have been talks about Stephon Diggs possibly moving on from Houston. I know Kansas City was in the mix. The return to Buffalo was in the mix. Obviously his season was cut short there in Houston with the ACL injury there. And then of course Houston had that loss to Kansas City in the divisional round. Now we talk about a team like Houston where CJ Stroud has came out, he's played well, he's got the team to the playoffs. He's elevated Houston, and then of course Houston's become a team in the AFC now where you're starting to kind of add them to Super Bowl conversation, but you're not quite putting them up there with Buffalo and Baltimore yet. To me, adding Christian Kirk, I mean, what does that do for the team? And then what does that do for your question mark? Because you still got Nico Collins, you still got Tank Dell. How are you going to keep? You're adding all these receivers to help Stroud out, right? But I mean,
Yeah.
defensively, there's really not much going on in Houston. And now you just added another receiver. How is that going to keep Diggs? If I'm Diggs and you're adding more receivers, I'm going to be like, okay.
Yeah, it's, well, I mean, look, it's we know the NFL is just it's a game of attrition, right? Can everybody stay healthy, and can people, can you structure the money right? And and obviously, CJ Stroud, it shows that he has the ability to be an elite quarterback in this league. And do you want to give him options? Do you want to have depth and in that kind of stuff? But you talk about the defensive side of the ball, it's kind of funny. D'Amico Ryans, you think that they need to make a leap. Kirk doesn't make that leap for them.
Of course not.
But but yeah, I mean, the first half of last year, they were tight. Okay, they're in the mix for a possible, Super Bowl run, but then they kind of fell off, and so it's like, yeah, I mean, you add a piece, you add some depth, you give yourself, and I don't think it didn't cost you anything. So it'll be
Right.
interesting, to see what else they do to try to improve and get into that conversation with the Bills, the Ravens, and the
Yep.
Chiefs every single
In
year.
the AFC, yeah. And then of course, obviously you look at Jacksonville, you gave away a receiver for a bag of chips, obviously a 2026 seventh round pick. I mean, Duval. I mean, what's going on in Jacksonville, right? I mean, it's
It's
it's it's
Jacksonville,
it's it's
right?
a
I
bad
mean,
thing
you
going
got
on
Joey
there,
Lawrence,
right?
who, he's like, I'm going to be a Jaguar for the rest of my life. Well, why wouldn't you? I mean,
And that's the
you know
thing
what I
too.
mean? You're just making your money. You're,
Yeah.
whatever. It's just, it's a weird situation. I don't know what's
Yeah.
going on in Jacksonville.
It's a bad situation there. And as Detroit fans, fortunately we've been there. But we talked about these defensive ends and we talked about Washington being in the mix for a couple of these guys here. Well, Debo Samuel has just gone to the Washington Commanders, leaving San Francisco. He's wanted out for quite some time now. He's shown his frustrations there in San Francisco, not only on the field but off the field. So what difference does Debo Samuel make in Washington now with that young quarterback and Jaden Daniels and coming off of an NFC championship game and being right there? What does that elevate the team to?
You don't know, because you don't know what Debo Samuel you're going to get. Are you going to get the Debo Samuel that can play every single position on the field and make an impact and be just a complete game changer and a touchdown waiting to happen when he gets the ball? Or is it going to be the Debo Samuel that have a belly like me that, it does is just is out of shape, it doesn't want to play and everything else. So I think that I, I I to err on the side of optimism, right? Like, so you look at it and you say, okay, this he had overstayed. He was not happy in San Francisco at the
Correct.
end and everything else. He needed out of there. He needed a new scenery and everything else. And you're going to this Washington Commanders team, and if I'm an offensive player, whether I'm an offensive lineman, I'm a running back, I'm a receiver, I'm a tight end, whatever, if you're telling me that I get to play with Jaden Daniels
Yeah,
as the quarterback, I'm gonna be exhilarated, I'm gonna be excited, and I'm gonna be motivated. So,
absolutely.
I think that he's probably gonna be okay. Listen, this is it. This is good. I'm on a contender, like a real contender, and with a quarterback who is, and with a coach and Dan Quinn that everybody loves, right? Like, I mean, Dan Campbell, Dan Quinn, they're the gamblers. They're, they're
Yep.
they're all about the players and everything else. So I think that this is good for the Commanders. I think it's good for Debo. I think, we don't know how much he has left in him, but I think you're going to get the best of what he has left
Yeah.
in Washington.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see. We'll see how things play out there in the nation's capital. Now, to kind of wrap things up here, NFL offseason, we got quarterbacks, right? We've got a couple question marks, some guys that still haven't signed anywhere, some guys that have expressed that they're moving on. A couple question marks here. Let's start here with the big one, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, the Jets are moving on from him. They released Devontae Adams, and that's another guy that we didn't mention earlier. Where's he going to go? But how much does he have left in the tank, right? And so we look at the Jets, right? They took a gamble. They try to do things the Aaron Rodgers way, right? And I love the joke that I've been seeing going around, right? Like on the Pat McAfee show, Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams did this super dramatic reveal on the FaceTime thing just for them to go 2-8 and get run out of the city. But let's pump the brakes on getting run out of the city because the Giants are in the mix for everybody that can throw a football. So with Aaron Rodgers here, I mean, do you sign the guy or I mean, does he just go away?
I don't if I'm the Giants, I don't sign him. Like, obviously the whole New York experience didn't work.
Right.
He's 41 years old. If you're the Giant now, the Giants have problems. Okay, the Giants
Absolutely.
have problems in their front office. They have problems with the coaching staff. They have problems with everything. I mean, ever since Eli Manning left, and I mean, what's going? They can't keep Saquon Barkley, who, hey, that was another one. He just signed a 2-year deal to make him the highest paid running back ever, and that, congratulations to him, because he absolutely deserves it.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
So, but if I'm the Giants, I stay completely, I steer clear of Aaron Rodgers. We don't need that circus. There's enough of a circus going on there. You have a situation, is Cam Ward the guy? You know what I mean? Like, so are you going to say, all right, listen, we're years away, so let's get Cam Ward, let's build around him, neighbors, all this other kind of stuff. So yes, you steer clear of Aaron Rodgers, and actually, if I'm the Giants, I mean, there was a talk about trying to get Stafford and everything else or whatever. I think that you're in the situation right now to where you're getting the best, the quarterback in the draft. I mean, it's a deep quarterback draft.
It
You get
is.
the best one that you think is going to fit you, and you ride with that.
Yeah. I agree. And as far as, Aaron Rodgers goes, right? I mean, listen, we're Lions fans, so might be a little bit of a homer take, but we've watched him beat up on us in Green Bay for so long. I'm so sick of the guy. I can't stand him. And watching what went down on the Jets was just it was so sweet to watch that train
Sensational.
wreck happen. It was hilarious to me. Um, listen, I I dislike Aaron Rodgers on and off the field, and that, whatever. Opinions are opinions. I'm going to share mine. You can disagree. It's just an opinion, but on and off the field, I think the guy sucks. So as a football fan watching this go down, I just want him to go away, right? Like this whole thing that he did in New York, getting Robert Saleh fired when it wasn't his fault really, and then you try and do the Packer way, and you bring in Randall Cobb, you bring in Lazard, you bring in Adams, you do all this stuff, and you suck. You're hot garbage. Oh well, he got hurt in the first game 2 years ago. We didn't get to see it, so he finally gets a full season, and it's terrible. I mean, the guy clearly is done. I think that for everybody's sake here in the NFL, I think we're all ready for Aaron Rodgers. Should just hang it up, save somewhat of a legacy that he has still, and just be done with it. But I don't know. I mean, I know the St. Louis Battlehawks and the UFL are looking for a quarterback, so maybe you could try that out for size. But moving on, let's talk
Well,
about
it was
guys.
just announced that the Grand Rapids
Oh,
Rampage are coming back to the Arena Football League.
there you go.
And but no, I will say just to keep talking about Aaron Rodgers because I know how much you love it. We might just run the rest of the show talking about Aaron Rodgers. But I will say no that Max Crosby after he signed, he said, look, I do believe he's got another year in him. I believe that he is 41, 42, whatever he is, but he's got some in the tank, and he's like, please come to the Raiders. So he's already making his recruiting pitch and things
Cool.
like that because they absolutely need a quarterback. But now there's other options out there as well. So do they go with we talked about we and this one, we talk about Sam Darnold, right?
Yeah.
We talked about this last, like during the regular season
Hmm.
before the playoffs and everything else. The guy had a great year. It was unbelievable. What do the Vikings do?
Hmm.
They are 100% committed on JJ McCarthy. And listen, I've been way wrong on things before and all this stuff, but I don't get it. The like you're going after a quarterback who couldn't throw the ball, who
Hmm.
who wasn't accurate unless he knew exactly where the defense was going to be for 3 years with the Michigan team. He's a tremendous athlete. He's he unless he figures out how to be accurate, whatever. But so they're moving on from Sam Darnold. So do the Raiders get into the mix? Who else does it? The Titans.
I mean, the
I mean, Sam
Titans need all
Darnold.
sorts of stuff to go happen. The
Yeah,
Titans are. You talk about teams that we've because going through this list, we've talked about quite a few teams that need a lot to happen. And the Titans, I mean, I can't even begin to start what's going on with the Titans there. But yeah, all right. So you see, you talk about Sam Darnold, right? I mean, he took a Vikings team that as soon as JJ went out in the preseason, you kind of wrote off Minnesota. Everybody wrote off Minnesota. Then Sam Darnold comes
15
out, has
wins
this
or 14
outstanding
wins.
year, 14 wins. Last game of the year was playing to win the division and get a 1 seed in the NFC. They ran into they got their kneecaps bitten off by the Detroit Lions, which duh. But like again, and then of course, you ran into the Rams, you ran into Stafford, which again, duh. But but no, in all seriousness, they had a fantastic year. It didn't go out their way. And it's football. It happens. It's a game. It's whatever. But Minnesota, they're going to be Minnesota and they're going to choose to be stupid. So now that leaves Sam Darnold out there. Now we've seen Sam Darnold with the Jets, with the Niners, with the whatever, and all this stuff. And it took Sam Darnold a long time to boost this NFL career up, but we've seen what he can do. So I think, yeah, you talk about these teams that need quarterbacks: Titans, Raiders, Jets, Giants, whatever. You talk about the draft, you talk about Shador, you talk about Cam Ward, you talk about Jackson Dart, I mean, Sam Darnold is one of those guys that he is a role player. You take a team that's a quarterback away from being a playoff team. I mean, Sam Darnold's your guy, not a rookie. Rookies
Yeah.
are for these teams that are just down bad. Like, Titans are a guy who needs to draft a Jackson Dart or Shador or whatever. You take a team that's a quarterback away. That's Sam Darnold.
Yeah. I mean, he proved it. I mean, yeah, I think that I think the Vikings moving on from him, because again, we don't know, and not only that, but we don't know what McCarthy's athleticism is going to be coming off of the injury, in
Right.
that kind of stuff. Some people are saying that he's ahead of schedule or whatever. I don't know, but then you get the Steelers situation right now.
This is
The
drive
Steelers
me insane.
the Steelers just win games. They always make the playoffs and everything else. But it's like now, like people are like, okay, well, you know, uh, 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 they lost their last six playoff games. Tomlin, this and that, and they can't. They haven't found a quarterback since Big Ben left. And you have Justin Fields, Russell Wilson. Probably Russell Wilson's not coming back. Is Justin Fields going to be the guy, or are you going to go and try and get a Sam Darnold? Are you gonna, there was talk about they were trying to trade for Matt Stafford and those kinds of things. But so what's the Steelers situation and what's going on with those two quarterbacks?
I mean, it's really frustrating to me, right? I know a couple episodes ago I went on a little tirade about Justin Fields and what I don't understand is how Pittsburgh specifically is looking in every other direction but what's right in front of them, and that is Justin Fields. I don't need to bring up the stats again. I've already done that. If you want to see it, episode 6, I already went through the whole thing. It what's frustrating to me is you got a guy like Justin Fields, who, by the way, when he was in Chicago, his last game as a Bear in the regular season, all of Soldier Field was chanting, "We want Fields. We want Fields." And then they let him go. They went out and got Caleb Williams. Bears fans are dumb. All of a sudden, Bears fans are like, "Oh, we love Caleb Williams. We're gonna paint our nails too because he's our guy." Listen, Bears fans are stupid. Everybody in the NFC North, they all suck except for the Lions. Point of the story is Justin
And
Fields is
and,
is
and that's not a homer talking. That's based in fact in analysis. That's
That's
analytics,
that's sports analysis right there.
sports
So,
analysis right
so
there.
but no, in all reality, yeah, Bears fans are really, really dumb. But again, you got a guy like Justin Fields, and again, you could homer, homer, homer. We're talking about all day. I mean, listen, I've been following Fields' career for a long, long time. This is a type of guy who not only will give you everything he has on the field and is talented as all hell and has proven that multiple times on the field. I mean, look, you take this Pittsburgh team here. He started because Russell Wilson was hurt. He was winning games. It's not like he wasn't getting a
It
job
was
done.
4-2.
He was 4-2 and he was winning games. And so it's frustrating, right? And then you sit here and you start, if you're Pittsburgh, you start talking about Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford, Daniel Jones. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. And I know, again, this is starting to sound just like the rant I had a couple episodes ago, but let's not, be redundant. But I think Justin Fields is a great quarterback, and we're talking about all these other teams that need quarterbacks, right? I think Justin Fields could be a decent fit there for the Giants. You let Fields and Neighbors develop together as that quarterback receiver duo. They're both young, they're both hungry. I think that could be a good fit for him. The Jets have been talked about for Justin Fields. There's a few teams that have been thrown in the mix here. Justin Fields deserves to be a starter on an NFL roster. It just depends on wherever he goes next. I would just love to see a front office go all in on him, not just sign him because that's the option that's happening right now. I want a team to be like, you know what? All right, let's go after Justin Fields, and that's our guy, and we're going to be all in. I want to see it because I know what Fields is capable of.
Yeah, in I know you love the guy and everything. I don't think the NFL front offices are in that mindset of like we're gonna go all in on this guy. I think he's gonna be one of those guys that's gonna have to be in a great situation. And again, it's a situation where I think that the Steelers can be because again, they I mean Ben Roethlisberger came out of nowhere and he was, everything up. But he wasn't like like a Joe Montana or a Dan Marino or
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson or any of these other guys, right? Like that that have a skill set that can elevate a team and everything, the Pat Mahomes and whatever. But so you can win in Pittsburgh with a guy who is one that has the locker room. You have the locker room behind you, and number two, does enough
Right.
with the way that franchise has always been, this style of player or whatever. You've had some talk about Ben Roethlisberger's come out and saying it's not the Steelers of old anymore or whatever, and we got to change some things and whatever. But I do think that I think that Fields, I think he stays in Pittsburgh. I wouldn't. You talk about the Jets and the Giants, and I wouldn't. If you like the guy, you don't want to wish that upon him. Either one of those. I think that those are probably landing spots for
Mm-hmm.
Russell Wilson. I think Russell Wilson is he's in the same boat as Aaron Rodgers, right? He's kind
Mm-hmm.
of hanging on.
Absolutely.
Doesn't want to give up his career or whatever. He's not what he was. He's on the downside, and those kinds of things. So I think that you got Rodgers, you got Wilson. Those guys are just going to end up somewhere as like almost a stopgap. Probably
Yeah.
going to go somewhere to where they're going to draft a quarterback, and those guys are going to be the 1 year placeholder for that quarterback. So, but I don't think that if the Giants are going to draft a guy like Cam Ward, you don't want to. Maybe you do bring in Russell Wilson for 1 year and let Cam Ward work with
Learn
him,
from him. Yeah.
and do that kind of a thing. I mean, I think that kind of makes a little bit of sense. But I think that Rodgers isn't that kind of guy.
No.
Like Rodgers isn't. I mean, how much did he actually work with Love and those kinds of
Even
things.
though Rodgers' whole career is he can give thanks to Brett Favre, but this is another
Yeah.
topic there.
But
But to wrap up the free agency here, real quickly, as a Tennessee guy, the Lions have pretty much expressed that they're moving on from Hendon Hooker. They've been having multiple meetings with Jalen Milroe. They're looking at maybe drafting him late to
yeah,
bring in as the new backup. Obviously, we brought Teddy Bridgewater back coming out of retirement. He's going to be the guy. He knows his role. He's there to just kind of be a team player and be there when we need him. He's not
I think
fighting
he's a
for a
coach in
spot.
waiting is basically what
Exactly.
you bring him in
Exactly.
for, right?
Yeah, he's a player's coach. So, we
Yeah.
move on from Hendon Hooker, Dad. You've got a lot of great things to say about Hendon Hooker. Um, as a Lions guy, also, what difference does it make in Detroit having Jalen Milroe as the backup versus Hendon Hooker? And then what does this mean for Goff's future too? Because how many years do you get left out of him?
Well, I think that that's what Brad Holmes is kind of thinking, right? Like, I mean, I have always said like Jared Goff a guy that can win you a Super Bowl? Yes, yes, he is. I mean, there's Trent Dilfer has a Super Bowl, Brad Johnson has a Super Bowl, Joe Flacco has a Super Bowl. Jared Goff can absolutely win you a Super Bowl on the right team and in the right situation, and it seems like this is what that is for him in Detroit. But again, you never know when the wheels are going to fall off with Jared Goff, right? Like yeah, he played great and he everything else. But I keep waiting for that Super Bowl letdown Rams Jared Goff to show up again. You know what I mean? So you have to have your plan B and you have to be developing that plan B in these next few years. And I thought that's the reason why you spent a third round pick on a guy like Hendon Hooker who was coming off the knee injury. Because prior to that knee injury, he was a first round quarterback. He was a Heisman contender. I mean, he's strong arm, accurate, athletic. He was kind of a poor man's Lamar Jackson, right? Like, so, but the knee injury kind of set him back. Now I kind of wonder, like, what happened there, because Hendon Hooker's a character guy. Hendon
Yeah.
Hooker, I mean, there's nobody has anything bad to say about him, about his work ethic or anything like that, and those kinds of things. I did say that when he came back, and we kind of like held our breath with the very first game. He like was running around. He was like, "Oh, this is the Hendon Hooker of old. This is going to be good." And then he hurt himself in the preseason game and had to go. And then and we were kind of like, "Oh boy, is this something to where he's always going to be one worried about getting the knee hit again, or two, is it just not going to be strong enough to withstand an NFL season and be the guy to replace?" And that could be what this is. And I don't know. Look, I love Hendon Hooker. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a great talent. Unfortunately, the knee injury is a big deal. If he's not progressing, then yeah, you move on, you get what you can for him before he's sits for too long, right? Like, you trade him now while he can still go somewhere and try to be something.
Right.
So I think that, yeah. And then the Jaden Milroe thing, boy, I watching Jalen Milroe, the last couple years at Alabama, I kept waiting. Like, you think he's talented, right? Like,
Mhm.
but he didn't make good decisions in big games.
Right.
He wasn't the most. He didn't take a game like both of those games against Michigan. You just kept waiting
Hmm.
for him to make a play either with his legs or with his arm, and he just didn't do it. Now a lot of that is Michigan's defense and their front line and stuff like that over the past few years, but really really good. But also the same thing in other games too with him. He wasn't able to do it, and so if he can't do that and didn't show that at that level, how is that going to translate to the NFL? And what are we doing? I mean, are we talking with him because we think that he's going to be the future? That doesn't sit well with me, because
No.
I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't see it either. But again, I've got a lot of trust and faith in Brad Holmes here. I mean, as we've mentioned earlier, he's been lights out, right? I mean, he's been making great moves. He's had great draft picks. So even though we don't see it right now, I mean, Brad Holmes seems something that we don't see, and so far he's been he's been outstanding there. So that pretty much wraps up the NFL offseason there. A lot of moves happened so far. There's still more to go. We still got the draft coming up. There's still a lot of days here, so a lot more can happen. We'll definitely keep you guys updated and stay on that. Make sure you guys follow our Instagram account because we will be posting as the news breaks all these new moves that happen in the offseason and during draft day and stuff like that. Um, but let's shift gears here. Let's get away from the NFL as we hit the final stretch here of the episode. I got a quick trivia for you before we go into our closing topics here. So we spent the first half talking about football. We're gonna spend the second half going through a couple other sports, basketball, baseball here. So this trivia kind of revolves around all sports. And then once again, the big four. Obviously, we got hockey, baseball, basketball, football. Um, so here's the question for you, Dad. There
Yeah.
are 12 pro sports teams who have a bird as their primary logo. Can you name all 12 across all four?
Okay. So let's go. Well, first of all, let's bring in Matthew McConaughey to talk about why there's so many bird names. It's just to try to get us to eat chicken wings, and I do love the chicken wings. So but let's start with, okay, let's go Seahawks.
There's one.
Go Cardinals, Arizona Cardinals. Um, let's go Falcons, um, and Ravens, Eagles. So that's five in the NFL, right?
Yep, there's five in
Is
the NFL.
There's five in the NFL? Okay,
Yes, you no
so
more NFL.
Okay. And then the baseball, we got the Orioles, we've got the Cardinals, St. Louis Cardinals. We've got what's another bird in in baseball?
Right, because there's three, you've got two.
Yeah, there's another bird. There's another bird somewhere flying around in baseball. Not this, not the pigeon that Randy Johnson hit either, or the seagull or whatever it was. But okay, so we've got the Orioles, we've got the Cardinals.
You used to love this team when you were a little kid. You had gear and everything. You been to a game, you had gear.
Oh, the Blue Jays.
Yep.
Blue Jays.
So you got the five NFL and the three MLB. There
So
are
that's eight. So I
four
got four
left.
four more. Um,
Now,
and I got the hockeys, and
do you
I
want to
got
know how many are in hockey and how many are in basketball?
well, I know that there's the Ducks in hockey.
Yep. So you've got one already from hockey. So there's three left total.
Three in hockey.
No, three total left.
Um, is there another one in hockey?
There's one more in hockey. And then the last two are basketball.
Another bird in hockey. Oh, penguins. Is
There you go. I was gonna say you don't
that a
really
mammal
think
or a bird?
it's a bird. It's got wings and a beak.
It doesn't, but it can't fly.
Well, neither can a
Okay.
flamingo.
So I got two. So I got two basketballs. So it's the Hawks and the Pelicans.
Boom. There you go. Yeah, there's all 12 for you. Those are the birds in sports, baby. Now,
I
what's
I think I
funny is
did
actually,
because again I like the chicken wings.
well, this is also, I mean, it's the greatest food ever. It's okay. Real quickly, death row, last meal. Dad, what do you got?
Coors Light bottle, chicken wings, extra crispy, plain buffalo sauce on the side, and French fries with ranch
It's a great meal right there.
all day,
That's a great meal. And in
all day.
fact, he eats this meal like four times a week.
Oh yeah,
You should see our Buffalo Wild Wings blazing reward points there we got. But
I
what's
could I
funny,
could I could eat it. I could eat it every meal of the
oh, it's the
day.
best meal ever.
Yeah.
What's funny about this list, though, you talk about birds, whatever. You know, you mentioned the NFL. The Seahawk. A Seahawk isn't a real bird.
No, it's not. It doesn't exist.
It
It's a
doesn't
mythical.
exist. It
It's a
doesn't
mythical
exist.
thing.
Just like South Detroit. You know, when Journey said border race South Detroit, it's not a real thing. There is no South
Oh, hold
Detroit.
on. Whoa, whoa,
South
whoa, whoa,
Detroit is
whoa.
Canada.
No, 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 no. Look at here, and I'm gonna look. I can't believe you. Everybody says this to try to sound smart and everything like that. Okay,
Look at a
South
map.
Detroit. If you go to the middle of any city, every city has a middle, and you go south of that middle, you are South Philly, South Detroit, South Perrysburg, South Orlando, South wherever. There is a south of every single city
The
because you go to the
problem
middle,
is,
and if you go to below it, then you're south. Just like
but
there's an east, a west, and a
no,
north
but
of every single city.
you should know that south of Detroit is Canada.
It's not south of Detroit. It's not. It didn't say
Okay,
born and raised
all
south
right,
of
okay,
Detroit. It
yeah,
says born
cool.
and
Okay.
raised in South Detroit. So there's a southern part of the city of Detroit. That's. I mean, I don't even know why we had this conversation. Like this is
See, but
this.
that's too technical because when you're in Detroit, you're in Detroit.
I'm getting flustered. I'm getting fired up. It's the silliest thing. It's people trying to be too smart, and they're outsmarting their smartness to dumbness is what happens, and that's dumb. It's a dumb argument.
Well, you know what? I think you trying to use a plastic thing and a stool to get on a horse and ice skate is dumb. Moving
Those are
on.
allowed to be there.
Moving on.
Those
We
are
haven't we
part of
haven't
the tools that are available.
well, the tools that are available is that the Detroit Pistons have made basketball relevant again. We talk about a team who went from the worst record in the history of the NBA last season and now this season are above 500, are in the last spot for the wild card of the playoffs. I mean, that's an impressive turnaround. I mean, imagine if the White Sox do that in baseball, right? I mean, it'd be
Yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah.
So you know, you talk about that. I mean, you go from the worst record in your sport to being a playoff team in one season. we've talked about how we're not huge NBA guys anymore. I kind of stopped following after the Celtics super team with Rondo, Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, Garnett, all those guys. You stopped watching after the '04 Pistons, really. So, I mean, is this us being homers, being from Detroit, has the Pistons being good kind of made you kind of watch the NBA again? Because it has for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I look, be the old guy, get off my lawn, whatever, whatever. Like I'll be the old guy. I loved 80s and 90s NBA. It was fantastic. Those teams, the league, the competition, the players, the stars, the rivalries, the all that kind of stuff. And then you get into, then I start with Magic, Bird, then you get into Jordan, you got Olajuwon, you had Barkley, and then it gets into the Kobe era and stuff, and then you had those Spurs teams with Manu Ginobili and Tim Duncan and Tony Parker, and like I mean it was awesome. It was the competition was great, and then the Pistons came, the 04 Pistons that won the NBA championship. I mean that team was the cast-offs. I mean, it was the band of misfits. It was a crew of,
Yep.
of players that nobody wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And you're sitting there and with that era and that team that had the number 2 overall pick that year, with LeBron went number 1, and then the Pistons had number 2, and everybody's like, this is easily Carmelo. And then no, we go Darko, and
Darko.
and then Darko became the human victory cigar. I mean, when he came in the game, it was because you were up by 40 and still won an NBA championship, after having blown that pick and everything else. But that team was a team. I mean, there was the Ben Wallace. Ben Wallace was 6'8", playing center.
Unreal.
You had Rasheed Wallace, ball don't lie. And he was, resurgent when he got to that team and in that
Mm-hmm.
environment. And Chauncey Big Shot Billups and Rip Hamilton and did Tayshaun Prince with the block on Reggie Miller. I mean, that was awesome. And then the league went to LeBron. And when LeBron first came in the league, I mean, the fact that he carried that Cleveland team to relevancy, right off the bat, I'm like, this is going to be good. And then all of a sudden, he does the whole, I'm taking my talents to South Beach, and then Bosch and D Wade, and then the league completely changed to these guys that they wanted to say, okay, well, I want to win a championship, so let's see what we can orchestrate and put teams together to win this national championship. You guys, yeah. I mean, Michael Jordan brought Dennis Rodman in to win a national to win an NBA championship. That team despised Rodman. He was the bad
Yeah.
boy Pistons, Rodman, and they were like, "What are we doing?" And those guys. I mean, Scottie Pippen to this day, I still hate the guy. You know what I mean? But Michael Jordan was like, "Look, we're gonna win with this guy. We're not. It wasn't about playing with friends and all this other kind of stuff. And
Right.
the league kind of and I just lost interest of it. I mean, it
Yeah.
was Cavs and Warriors every single year. Then it was this, and
And then
it,
you
it
got
just
guys who
wasn't
are
fun.
on a different team every season. I mean, you talk about Russell Wilson, who had that historic average triple double season in Oklahoma City, and you were like, "Oh, this
Russell
guy's awesome."
Westbrook, not Wilson.
What? Yeah, Russell Westbrook.
Yeah,
And now I'm, you know,
James Harden. I mean,
I'm
I don't
tuning
even
in.
know.
At this point, I'm only watching for the Pistons, and I tune
Right,
in, and we're playing Denver, and I see Westbrook out there, and I'm like, when the hell did he come on the Nuggets? And dudes are like, dude, he's been on the Nuggets. And I'm like,
mighty.
since when? And they're like, well, he went to this team and then he went to the Clippers and then he went to the things. And then
Yeah,
this is, I'm like, so he's on his 15th team. I'm like, this is a guy like back in the day, right? Like you were mentioning, right? You go all the way back to 80s, 90s. I'm going back to even just the early 2010s with the, that Celtics team with the Rajon Rondo and the Ray Allen. And he obviously, Ray Allen had his fair
and they
share of
kind of,
teams
I
also,
mean,
but it wasn't,
Garnett and that, but
yeah, and even Shaq. I mean, Shaq's been on every team in the league, but it wasn't. It was one guy, right? It was one guy who kind of bounced around to everybody else who stayed put. I mean, now it's like all these dudes. I mean, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant,
they've
Kyrie
all been out.
Irving.
James Butler.
They've been on 87
Yeah.
teams now. I mean, these are guys that I all watched drafted that I grew up with. I mean, they've been on so many teams I've lost track. But while we're on the topic of, basketball and good and whatever, and the Pistons and all this, watching the Pistons go from the worst team in basketball in the history of the NBA to within one season becoming a playoff team, and they're a fun team. I mean, it's a young, fun team. It's a lot like the Tigers. It's a young, fun team, and they're fighting and they're playing well. They're clicking on all cylinders, and they are making waves across the world. I mean, this is the most exposure I've seen the Pistons get nationwide on media, and I couldn't
Since
tell
oh
you how
04.
long.
Yeah,
Right.
since oh 04. I
And
mean, really.
I'm gonna give a lot of credit to Cade Cunningham. He's kind of the glue that puts this all together. Cade Cunningham is absolutely unbelievable. He's the MVP to me of this season, and I'm sorry, but I mean this guy's averaging 25 points a game, 6 rebounds, 9 assists. He's 46% from the field. I mean, he's having an outstanding year. He was the first Piston to make it to the All-Star game in 10 years. I mean, that is pretty outstanding.
And the big thing about him is because he's an anomaly in today's NBA, because he could have easily jumped ship and gone anywhere that he wanted to, but he said, I want to win in Detroit.
Yes.
He bought into the city. He said, I want to win in Detroit. And he's that hasn't happened in over 10 years in the league.
Yep.
Somebody saying, I'm going to win here and do it here, and everything else. So yeah, I love the guy. Again, character guy, great talent.
Exactly.
He's got the whole team buying into that mentality, and they are. I mean, we all the records and things that's happened, like the 8-game win streak and all that stuff. They are doing things that haven't happened in Detroit for the Pistons since those Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, Wallace squared teams.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's awesome. It's fun. It
Yeah.
it does. I love to see it, and it's good to have some interest in the league again. Who knows? Maybe that'll start a trend, because I mean
Yep.
these things are all cyclical, right? Like a trend kicks off, and you see a team go worse to playoff and things like that, and if they make a run, then maybe it changes the league back to that and to what it was, and hopefully it does, because it's a fun league when it's in that mode.
Absolutely.
um and so hopefully
Yeah.
it happens.
Yeah. And it's for what it's worth, as far as Detroit goes, it's waking the city back up now, having the Red Wings, the Pistons, the Tigers, and the Lions all playoff teams. I mean, it's waking the city back up. It's awesome for us homers here, but it's also awesome to see it's like an underdog type of thing, right? I mean, the nation was behind the Lions in football, right? I mean, everybody was behind the Tigers last year. They were like, this team, I mean, where did this team come from? And then they beat the Astros. They gave Cleveland a run for their money to start, and then now you've got the Pistons who are doing something crazy. And a lot of people are jumping ship here, and they're like, okay, you know what? This is awesome watching. I mean, everybody, the people that are still invested in the NBA are like, oh my God. I mean, this is the same team that was the laughing stock of the NBA last year. And I mean, these guys they're a cool group. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, listen, Detroit, we're sweet, man. I mean, what up though? You know what I mean? Like we're pretty cool, right? We'll
it's
put our
it's
buffs
it's a
on,
it's a different mentality, right?
it is.
it,
And
and
like you mentioned earlier, the rest of the guys have bought into that, right? I mean, Cade Cunningham has brought this persona, and it is affected everybody on the team. It's gone to everybody, and it's awesome seeing them all come together. And like you mentioned, I hope that kind of goes league wide going forward, so basketball can start being a little bit more entertaining again. So it's great to see, go Pistons. Not huge NBA guys, but this has been really awesome to kind of see, and it's gotten us back into it a little bit. But
I would love to be again, but again, like I said, I it was there that stretch where
yeah, it was
it
bad.
felt like every game was the All-Star game.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like that's what I was watching,
Yep.
and oh, you got these, it just it so hopefully, yes. I mean, hopefully
Yeah.
this starts a resurgence of back to that, and this is kind of a blueprint that people are going to want to follow, that you get a guy like, again, Cade Cunningham, who said, I want to win in Detroit. If I'm going to
Yeah.
win, I want to win in Detroit.
And
And
and you gotta love it too because the city has his back like no other,
oh yeah.
and it's the theme going around Detroit. Everything it's all about. And Dan Campbell really started the whole thing, grit. And now every team in Detroit is all about grit. So, but while we're on the topic of basketball, let's transition here. It's now March. March
It's
Madness
it's
is
it's the month of
approaching.
Izzo.
It's the month of Izzo. And
And
we do, yeah.
I was looking back at the TVs, and Sparty was down what, 7 at halftime.
Seven
They
and a
ended
half.
up
Yep.
winning that game. I think at the final ended up being 91-84. So number one seed in the Big Ten going into the Big Ten tournament, and we'll see what happens. Do they have enough to get themselves to a one seed? Probably not. They're probably likely a two seed going into the tournament. But let's talk about like
Yeah.
what the one seeds are going to look like, because we've got Auburn, we've got
Hmm.
Alabama, we've got Duke, we've got Houston, we've got Tennessee, and now Florida, who are going to
Yeah.
be the four number one seeds
Yeah.
coming in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean it's getting good, man, as it does every time around this year. I mean, we every year around this time we just talked about basketball and the NBA and how it was dying, whatever. The one constant is March Madness has always been that super exciting thing. I mean, everybody looks forward to March Madness, and that's kind of kept basketball relevant, in my opinion. Has been college basketball because March Madness is always there. Now it's March. It's here. We're
Mhm.
here. We're excited. We're awesome. We're getting ready to, everybody's going to start doing their brackets soon. It feels like a national holiday and it's a great feeling. And so we talk about conferences, right? We're getting ready to go into these conference tournaments to decipher the seeding here for the big guns, the big tournament. And you talk about the Big Ten, you talk about the ACC and all these other schools and what's going on and whatnot. Well, you know, and unfortunately for the SEC, the Big Ten turned them into a basketball school because of the last couple of years here. So you're looking at the SEC. I mean, you've got Alabama, you got Auburn, you got Florida, you got Tennessee. I mean, there's a lot going on here in the SEC. These are all great teams that could definitely make a very deep run here. We did our predictions for the Final Four last episode. But going into these conference tournaments now, Dad, is as a Tennessee guy, I'll let you start off with the SEC. And then as an Ohio State guy, I'll go ahead with the Big Ten. But go ahead, give me your thoughts here. Where do you see Tennessee, and then how do you see the rest of the SEC playing out in this conference tournament, and then going forward for the NCAA tournament?
Well, look, SEC it's unbelievable. I mean, there's a handful of teams that have just as good a shot as anybody else winning that tournament, and I don't necessarily know how much the top part of the league can help themselves or hurt themselves with how they perform in the tournament. I think that they're pretty solidified. I mean, they might move from, like there was the conversation. I mean, it's a pretty foregone conclusion that Auburn is probably a one seed. Duke's probably a one seed. Houston's probably a one seed. Then we had the thing to where, okay, so is it going to be Tennessee or Alabama? Are they going to be the other one seed? What happened? And then there was that awesome game when Tennessee played Alabama,
Mm-hmm.
and the
That was
last
so
second,
cool.
the almost half court shot to win the game. And Tennessee, okay, so now Tennessee is going to be a one seed, and then Tennessee goes to Ole Miss, and then they lose. But then Florida plays
Yep.
Alabama, and then Florida beats Alabama. So now is Florida have a shot at getting that last one seed? You don't know. So there's that, but I think that whoever's not that one seed is obviously the two seed. So you're talking about those teams that are going to be either ones or twos, and then how much of a difference does that make, as far as making your run in the tournament and being a one seed or a two seed. I don't know. But the SEC, I mean, that's where you're living with Auburn, you're living with Alabama, Tennessee, Florida. uh so And then there's other teams in there too that are. I mean, you don't want to play. You don't want to play Ole Miss. You don't want to play
No.
these guys. Um, Duke. I mean, you got Flag, you got probably the best player in the game, and they're there, they're good, they're going to be tough to beat, and all this other kind of stuff. But I do think that the SEC tournament is going to be must see TV. I think it's going to be fun to watch. I think every game is going to be awesome, and but I don't think unless you get a team like a Kentucky that makes a run or an Ole Miss that makes a run and wins the league tournament, you're not going to see much shifting going on with the teams that are in the SEC. I think they're pretty much got their spots filled in the tournament, and I think that's but it's going to be a fun watch. It's going to be a fun watch. I think you could flip a coin as to who's going to win the SEC tournament.
Yeah, I mean it's getting really good here down the stretch. So there's the SEC, and then you mentioned the Big Ten, right? I made my comment earlier, about the Big Ten running the SEC into a basketball school, but no, I mean the Big Ten has had it's always been kind of relevant in basketball as well. I mean, this year we're looking at Michigan State is the front runner in the Big Ten. We call March Izzo here around the north. March is Izzo month. But Michigan has come back to a little bit of relevancy in basketball. They've been ranked for the last couple weeks here.
Yeah, they had a slide, but I think that they'll right the ship there a little bit. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and you mentioned you mentioned that Michigan lost to Maryland last night. Maryland is up there now. So you've got Maryland is currently ranked 13, but they just beat 17 Michigan. I think that Michigan will drop. Obviously, Maryland will go back up. But you talk Big Ten, you talk any sport, you never really could Maryland. What But so yeah, Michigan State, Maryland, and then you got Wisconsin. Wisconsin's always kind of up there, both football and basketball. They're always just kind of like, that's your team. With if they're doing really bad, you're like, well, whatever. If they're doing really good, you're like, yeah, well, they're never really a surprising team. But Wisconsin ranked number 12 at the time of this recording, and then of course you have Purdue. Now Purdue was the one seed with Zach Edey all year. Of course they were the powerhouse. Zach Edey's gone now. They Ohio State upset them at home not too long ago. And then they turned around and blew out Michigan, who was ranked at the time at home. So what bothers me about Purdue now, a year later, they were in the national championship last year, but now this year, the inconsistency, right? How do you go from getting, losing a home game to an unranked team and then blowing out a ranked team the very next day? So there's a lot going on there. Obviously you've got UCLA 12-7, Illinois. You got these other teams that are making their pushes here to get into this tournament, trying to make their last ditch effort to make it to the NCAA tournament rather than the NIT. Unfortunately, my Buckeyes deserve to not play another game ever again because they've been god awful all year long. And that sucks for me. So, basketball season, as far as alma maters go or future alma maters go, is over for me. But as a hometown kid who grew up in the state of Michigan, I'm going to ride Sparty's coattails here. We can get into predictions if you'd like. I know we kind of talked about them a little bit last week, but some things have changed. We haven't made our bracket yet, so these predictions aren't final. They're not final until we make our bracket, but I still feeling pretty good about Sparty. What about you?
yeah. Again, it's the Sparty team is fun to watch. And I think one of the things that makes this team, because I mean, Izzo does crazy things in March, whatever, and they go on their runs and stuff like that, and they play the tough schedule early on. They get beat up. They start the season ranked, and then they drop out of the rankings because they lose three of their first four games because they play, you know, ranked teams that are ranked 1, 2, and 3 and lose those games, and he does that on purpose, and he's always done that and that kind of a thing, he's winning his coach in the Big Ten, but he says it's just because I've been here a long time, kind of like LeBron with his 50,000
Yeah.
points.
Yeah.
LeBron has played 40 years, but so but this team has everything, right? Like they have bigs, they have outside shooting, they have talent, they have defense. typical Izzo defense and in that so yeah, you can they absolutely make a run? Can they be a Final Four team? Absolutely they can. Right now they're projected to be kind of a 2 seed. I like it.
Yeah.
I think that
Oh yeah.
that's strong. It's unless they fall flat on their face in the Big Ten tournament, then they're probably going to stay a 2 seed. I don't think they have a shot at getting into a 1 seed, but 2, 3, they're there. Like you said, Michigan looked like they were going to be, probably a 2 seed or a 3 seed or whatever, and then all of a sudden they went on a slide to where they lost at home by 20 points to Illinois and
Yep.
whatever. So I don't know. Are they going to bounce back? If they have a good Big Ten tournament, maybe. Um, you always talk about Wisconsin and Purdue every single year, right? Wisconsin, Purdue, and you always think like, okay, this is going to be their year or whatever. And they're a Sweet 16, Elite Eight team, and that's pretty much every once in a while they pop into the Final Four. Like Purdue did last year, and we thought finally they're going to break free, through and all this stuff, and then I don't know, I don't have a lot of faith in them. But then you got other schools, you know, it, it, it's it's SEC and the Big Ten, right? Like although you got Duke. But let's some you got St. John's, they're playing well. That's the beauty of you get these two big powerhouse conferences with all of these teams. You see, you were going to roll out a half dozen teams from each conference that have a chance to win the national championship, and then you get like a St. John's from the Big East that kind of came out of nowhere. Um, you know, uh, to win it. But yeah, it's going to be fun. That's why I kind of love
Yeah.
it. I mean, we made our way too early predictions and
Yeah.
stuff like that,
Of
and
course.
big
Yeah.
Final Four teams. But I mean, who knows? The my Final Four teams could all be in the same bracket and not be
Right.
possible. So
Right.
it's kind of silly until the bracket comes out. But
Which we're gonna end up doing. We're gonna do a bracket here live. We haven't really decided if we're gonna do two brackets, mine versus his, or if we're gonna combine and do one. But either way, there will be brackets made there. But we're getting down the stretch here, and it's about to get good, and I'm really excited about it. Um, but yeah, I think let's wrap it up here. Baseball season is slowly coming up here. Obviously, we had spring training going on here, but the regular season is getting closer and closer as we know it. The last couple episodes we've really dove into baseball. We didn't really talk baseball this episode because the last 2, 3 episodes we kind of dedicated most of it to it. But um, when baseball season starts kicking off in full effect, we'll be ready for that. We'll keep you guys updated. Again, follow the socials. I'm going to a spring training game in a couple of days. I'll get some content down there, so make sure you guys follow all that. Um, Also, don't worry when summer comes up. Me and my dad, we do a thing here. Stadium visits will be on the rise. We have some videos in the archive that we're gonna kind of revive. RIP to Tropicana Field there in Tampa. Hurricane Milton did a number on it, but we did a tour there and never uploaded a video. So we're working on getting that old footage edited and ready to go just to kind of do a final last tribute to the Trop, even though it wasn't the greatest of ballparks. But
and I think that look, I mean, obviously it wasn't meant to be a baseball park and in that, and it had its issues or whatever. But I'll be honest with you, I didn't mind it. I know everybody's like, oh, it's the worst, it's the worst, da 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 da. Yeah, it wasn't. You're not meant to play baseball. For me, you're not meant to play baseball indoors to begin with. And
yeah,
I'll even go old school on you. You're not meant to play baseball at night. It should be a day game. It should be, whatever and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I digress. But I didn't mind it. I didn't mind the Trop. I kind of thought it was pretty cool in some
yeah.
areas and stuff like that. The food was amazing.
The food was great, and we did
The
a whole
food was
food
really
review
good.
thing there. Yeah, like I said, they're archived videos that never got uploaded. So we're we're gonna go through those and chop them up and get them out there as our tribute to the Trop. We've been to a few other stadiums. We've got videos, so we're working on getting some quick montages and stuff like that for the old videos that we have from the old stadiums we visited, because we've already been to what, 8, 9 now at this point. So this upcoming summer, we're looking to hit at least two to four more this summer, to get some content out there, as baseball guys, and travel the MLB and get those stadium tours going. Um, and then, yeah, make sure you guys follow us on all the socials: TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Everything will be in the link below. Dad, final remarks. What do you got?
I can ride a horse.
You can't ride a horse and you can't ice skate.
I can ride a horse.
You,
I can ice skate.
you can't do any of those things. Oh, but while we're on the topic, follow the socials for those too, because those videos, we got about 2.5 months till I'm back home in Ohio there, and we will be getting a lot of YouTube videos out there of us doing these type of conversations that we've been having. We're gonna go ice skating. We're gonna ride a horse. We're gonna curl. We could do curling. Well, I'll do some curling.
Absolutely.
I've
Yeah.
I've been curling before. Have you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
No,
I'm
I was
off.
the greatest. I was the greatest. You remember
Oh,
when back in high school when I was on the swim team, one of our
yeah.
trips, you were watching me. I was unbelievable.
I curled with you, dude.
Dude, I don't remember that. This was 100 years ago. It was like 6 years ago.
Yeah. Next time we come back, though, I will have birthed 2 guinea pigs.
This is also true. Make sure that you make sure you get that on document so we can stay tuned on TikTok, because we'll do an update on the guinea pigs for you guys. Unbelievable what goes on in that house. Down there in the Berg. Good old
Unbelievable.
Perrysburg. But
It's
yeah,
unbelievable.
guys, make sure you follow us on the socials. A lot of good stuff coming up. It's more than just a podcast. We've got a lot of stuff planned out, and we hope you guys enjoy. So, uh, with that being said, March coming up, baseball coming up, a lot of good coming here soon. So, you got anything else?
Nope.
That's it.
Nope. I'm done. I'm done talking for the day.
I'm
Tired.
gonna, yeah, time to have some more happy
Yeah.
dads.
All right.